It was a quiet morning in Washington, D.C., in May 2025, when Jasmine Crockett, a Democratic congresswoman from Texas, sat in her office on Capitol Hill. The sun was filtering through the blinds, casting gentle beams on the stack of papers before her. She was preparing for another busy day, yet her thoughts were already drifting toward the upcoming legislative session. Just as she was about to reach for her coffee, her phone rang. It was a number she didn't recognize. "Congresswoman Crockett?" The voice on the other end said. "This is Marcus Williams from CNN. We'd like to invite you to participate in a special program about youth and global political leadership, alongside President Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso. We think your insights on civil rights and social justice would provide a valuable perspective." Jasmine froze for a moment. She hadn't expected such a call, and the name Ibrahim Traoré immediately intrigued her. A young president from Burkina Faso? Only 35 years old? The possibilities flooded her mind. "Why specifically Ibrahim Traoré?" she asked, leaning back in her chair, her curiosity piqued. Marcus explained, his voice calm and composed. "He's a young leader who has already transformed his country through social and economic reforms. We believe it would be valuable to contrast youth leadership across continents and discuss how a new generation is shaping the future of politics. The theme for the program is Hope for a New Generation of Leaders." Jasmine smiled slightly. She had read a few articles about Traoré, but the opportunity to speak directly with him, especially about issues of youth leadership and reform, was something she couldn't pass up. "I'm interested," she said. "It sounds like a fascinating conversation. I accept." Later that day, as the news began to settle in, Jasmine felt a flutter of excitement. At 43, she had become a rising star in the American political landscape, known for her passionate advocacy of civil rights, social justice, and reforming the criminal justice system. Over the years, she had pushed through bills aimed at racial equality and dismantling systemic inequities in American society. She had never imagined, however, that she would be joining forces with a leader from Africa whose journey had already redefined the possibilities for youth-led governance. Meanwhile, far away in Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso, Ibrahim Traoré sat at his desk in the presidential office, reviewing documents. The news of the CNN program had reached him via his communications advisor, Yakuba Sawardo, who entered the office with a tablet in hand. "Mr. President," Yakuba began, "CNN has extended an invitation for you to participate in a program with Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. She is known for a strong stance on social justice in the United States, especially her work on criminal justice reform." Ibrahim looked up from his desk, intrigued. The concept of a joint program with a young American leader fascinated him. He had heard of Jasmine's work, how she fought for marginalized communities and challenged systemic racism. Ibrahim, despite his relative youth, had already done much to alter the course of Burkina Faso's future, particularly in areas like education and healthcare. The invitation seemed like an opportunity to discuss the shared struggles young leaders face, despite the geographical and cultural differences between their countries. "I've read about her work," Ibrahim said thoughtfully. "Her focus on criminal justice reform and healthcare is something we share in common. I believe this will be a productive exchange." Dr. Alonso Ouedago, Ibrahim's senior policy advisor, nodded in agreement. "President, this could be a unique opportunity to demonstrate the capacity of young leaders to drive meaningful change. A program like this can show the world that youth have the vision and determination to lead, both in Africa and the Americas." Ibrahim smiled softly. The idea of discussing leadership with someone who shared his values was exciting. He saw in Jasmine a kindred spirit, one who understood the importance of youth in politics, not just as the future, but as the present. "Let's accept," Ibrahim said, his eyes narrowing in contemplation. "We need to demonstrate that leadership isn't bound by age or traditional political structures, but by vision, commitment, and courage." The program was scheduled for the following Thursday. Two young political leaders from different continents, Jasmine Crockett and Ibrahim Traoré, would share their insights on how youth could shape the future of global politics. Both leaders, though operating in vastly different environments, were united by a common purpose: to serve the people and create lasting change. The day of the program finally arrived, and both leaders were preparing in their respective locations. At CNN's Atlanta studios, Jasmine Crockett stood before the camera, adjusting her microphone. The studio lights were bright, and the atmosphere was charged with anticipation. Anderson Cooper, the veteran journalist tasked with moderating the conversation, gave her a reassuring smile. "Congresswoman Crockett," Anderson began as the show began live, "today we have a unique opportunity to speak with one of the youngest and most dynamic political leaders in Africa, President Ibrahim Traoré. What can you tell us about the importance of youth leadership in your work?" Jasmine smiled, the question giving her the chance to express what had driven her political career from the very beginning. "I believe our generation faces challenges that have been ignored or mishandled by previous generations," she said, her tone firm. "But we also have the power and the technology to tackle these challenges in ways that were once unimaginable. We no longer have the luxury to wait for our turn. Issues like racial injustice, economic inequality, and climate change require immediate action." Anderson nodded and then turned to Ibrahim. "President Traoré, you've been leading Burkina Faso for several years now. How do you see the role of youth in shaping Africa's political future?" Ibrahim smiled warmly, a glimmer of pride in his eyes as he spoke. "In Africa, 70% of the population is under the age of 30. Our youth are not just the future, they are the present," he said. "If we do not act now, if we do not provide opportunities for young people to lead, then we risk leaving a generation behind. We cannot afford to wait. The problems we face in Africa are urgent, and it is the youth who will drive the change." Jasmine, hearing his words, nodded in agreement. "In the United States, we are often told that we should wait our turn, that we need more experience or should be more patient. But the truth is, these issues won't wait. Climate change, inequality, these problems need solutions now, not decades from now." Ibrahim's gaze grew intense as he responded. "In Burkina Faso, we do not wait for permission. We do not wait for the right time. We do what is necessary. Young leaders must have the courage to challenge the status quo, to be bold and unafraid of change." Anderson saw the clear connection between the two leaders. "It seems that both of you share a similar philosophy when it comes to leadership. It's about breaking barriers, challenging the system, and creating real change for the people." "Yes," Jasmine agreed. "For me, politics is about people. It's not about power. It's about serving those who have been forgotten, those who have been left behind by the political system. Whether it's in the U.S. or in Burkina Faso, we are fighting for the same thing, justice for the people." As the program progressed, Anderson shifted the discussion to the personal experiences that had shaped each leader's political philosophy. "Congresswoman Crockett, you grew up in a community where many people faced systemic challenges. How has your background influenced your work in Congress?" Jasmine took a deep breath, her voice softening as she spoke from the heart. "I grew up in a poor, working-class neighborhood in Texas," she said, her voice carrying the weight of those memories. "My mother worked 3 jobs to support us, and I saw many of my friends fall victim to drugs, violence, or the prison system. For me, politics was never an academic exercise. It was about survival. It was about making sure that people like me, people who struggle every day, had a voice in the system." The audience could hear the sincerity in her words, and Ibrahim listened intently, his own experiences resonating with hers. Anderson turned to him. "President Traoré, can you share how your own upbringing shaped your approach to governance?" Ibrahim's eyes grew distant for a moment as he recalled his childhood. "I grew up in a small village in a farming family," he said, his voice tinged with sadness. "My parents struggled with droughts, and when we were unable to feed ourselves, corrupt politicians exported grain, while our people starved. I saw children die of preventable diseases because the government lacked the resources to provide basic health care. These experiences shaped my view of politics. I realized that leadership is not about privilege, it's about service. It's about ensuring that no one is left behind." Jasmine, deeply moved, nodded. "That's exactly it," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Real leadership comes from understanding the struggles of the people, from having lived those struggles yourself. Ibrahim continued, his voice growing emotional. That's why, when I hear about your work on criminal justice reform, I understand. I understand the pain that comes from a system that fails the most vulnerable. Jasmine wiped her eyes, unable to hold back the tears any longer. I'm sorry, she whispered. It's rare to find a leader who understands this on such a deep, personal level. The conversation continued with Anderson turning his attention to the theme of hope. Both of you have spoken about the challenges you face today and the need for action. But how do you stay hopeful in the face of such overwhelming odds? What keeps you motivated? Jasmine's gaze softened as she reflected on the question. Her eyes met Anderson's, and she exhaled slowly before responding. Hope is something we have to cultivate every day. When I look at the youth in my country, especially those in marginalized communities, I see both the pain of systemic injustice and the fire for change. They remind me that there is hope, but it's up to us to build the path forward. But I won't lie, some days are harder than others. There are times when the bureaucracy and the resistance to change seem insurmountable. It feels like we're fighting against an unmovable tide. Anderson nodded thoughtfully. But despite that resistance, you keep fighting, he said, his voice encouraging. Jasmine's voice grew stronger as she spoke. Yes, because I know that change is possible. Every victory, no matter how small, is a step forward. When I hear from people who tell me that my work has changed their lives, that keeps me going. It's not about me. It's about the people who are counting on us. Ibrahim, who had been listening closely, leaned forward, his expression thoughtful. Congresswoman, I understand what you mean, he said. In Burkina Faso, there are days when the weight of responsibility feels unbearable. We are a poor country, and the challenges are immense. But then, I see the faces of the people we've helped. I see the children who are learning to read and write because of the education reforms. I see the families who no longer have to choose between food and healthcare because of the universal healthcare system. Those moments remind me that all the struggles are worth it. When I see the change we're making, I feel that hope. Jasmine smiled, moved by Ibrahim's words. You've done incredible things in Burkina Faso, she said, her voice filled with admiration. Your reforms have inspired not just your country, but the world. Ibrahim's eyes lit up with a mixture of humility and pride. Thank you, Congresswoman. But I'm not alone in this. I have a team of people who believe in the same vision. We're building something bigger than ourselves. And that's what leadership is about. It's not about the individual. It's about creating a movement that lasts long after we're gone. Anderson, who had been quiet for a moment, leaned in, sensing that this was the perfect opportunity to delve deeper into their connection. It sounds like you both have similar philosophies. Leadership is about the people, the movement, and the long-term vision. But you've also both faced criticism. How do you deal with that criticism, especially when it comes from those who believe that your ideas are too idealistic? Jasmine didn't hesitate. I get called too emotional or too young all the time. People say that I'm too idealistic, that I don't understand the reality of politics. But they're wrong. I understand the reality. I understand the urgency. Every day that we wait is another day that people suffer. It's easy to criticize when you're not the one making the decisions, when you're not the one trying to change a broken system. Ibrahim nodded in agreement. In Burkina Faso, we faced similar resistance. Many people said that universal health care was impossible, that it was too expensive for a country like ours. But I couldn't ignore the cries of the people who needed care. I couldn't accept that children were dying because they couldn't afford medicine. I didn't care if people thought it was unrealistic. I knew it was the right thing to do. And now, we've implemented a system that covers 95% of the population. Jasmine's eyes widened in admiration. That's incredible. And you didn't let anyone tell you it couldn't be done. No, Ibrahim said with quiet resolve. I didn't. Because I know what it feels like to be powerless, to watch people suffer and feel helpless. That's why I fight so hard to make sure that no one else has to feel that way. And I see that same fire in you, Congresswoman. I see that you, too, are fighting for those who have been forgotten. Jasmine's voice wavered slightly as she spoke. Ibrahim, hearing your story reminds me why I do this. It's easy to get caught up in the noise, the politics of it all. But it's the people who matter. It's the families, the children, the communities who need us to stand up for them. Anderson, who had been deeply moved by the exchange, spoke softly. This is the kind of leadership that the world needs, he said. Leadership that is rooted in empathy, in understanding the pain of others. You are both showing us what true leadership looks like. Ibrahim's voice was filled with quiet determination as he responded. True leadership is not about holding power. It's about lifting others up, helping them to stand on their own. It's about creating a world where everyone has the opportunity to succeed, regardless of where they come from or how much money they have. Jasmine nodded, wiping a stray tear from her cheek. I couldn't agree more. And that's why we need to continue this work. We can't stop now. We can't let the people down. Ibrahim smiled, his eyes filled with compassion. We won't. We'll keep fighting, together. As the show neared its end, Anderson shifted the conversation toward a more forward-looking perspective. We've heard about the incredible work that both of you are doing. But what comes next? What is the next step in the fight for justice and equality? Jasmine took a deep breath, her mind already racing ahead to the possibilities. For me, the next step is collaboration. We need to build a global movement for social justice. We need to create networks of young leaders who are committed to fighting the same battles, whether it's in the U.S., Burkina Faso, or anywhere in between. We can learn from each other, support each other, and share strategies for making change. Ibrahim nodded. I agree. This is not just about our individual countries. This is about a global effort to lift people out of poverty, to ensure access to education and health care for all. We need to establish connections between young leaders across borders to make sure that we are all working toward the same goal. Anderson's eyes sparkled with excitement. It sounds like the beginning of something truly powerful, a network of global youth leaders committed to real social change. Jasmine's eyes glinted with passion. Exactly. And I want to take it a step further. I propose that we establish a caucus of young leaders from around the world, focusing on social justice. We can exchange ideas, share our successes and failures, and help each other implement the reforms we're fighting for in our own countries. Ibrahim's face broke into a wide smile. This is a fantastic idea, Congresswoman. A global network of youth leaders who are determined to bring about real change. This could transform the way politics is done, not just in our countries, but around the world. Jasmine looked directly at Ibrahim, her heart swelling with gratitude. I'm honored to be part of this conversation with you, President Traoré, and I'm excited to see where this journey takes us. As the conversation wrapped up, Anderson turned to both leaders. What you've shared today has been truly remarkable. You've shown that empathy, vision, and collaboration are the pillars of effective leadership. You've demonstrated that politics doesn't have to be about power. It can be about service, about lifting others up. The program ended, but the impact of what had been discussed was only just beginning. Social media exploded as clips from the show went viral. The moment when Jasmine broke down in tears as Ibrahim shared the story of his sister, Fatu, touched the hearts of millions. People from around the world expressed their admiration for the sincerity, empathy, and commitment to justice that both leaders exhibited. In the weeks that followed, Jasmine announced her plan to visit Burkina Faso, not as a tourist, but as a guest of the president to learn about the reforms he had implemented. Ibrahim, in turn, invited Jasmine to help organize an international conference of young leaders, where they could continue the work of building a global network of empathetic politics. Ibrahim, thank you for reminding me that leadership isn't just about the big policies, Jasmine said in an interview after the show. It's about the people. It's about the heart. Ibrahim's words echoed in her mind. We are showing that leadership is about the people, not the system. It's about serving others, not serving ourselves.